Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TheAirsoftTech podcast, episode 8. Almost forgot what episode we're on. Today we have a special guest with us. He goes by the screen name of Starfolder, and his name is Kory Escue. So if he would like to introduce himself, he can now.
Hey guys, I'm Kory. I don't do much with forums anymore. Mostly you'll find me on Facebook, but been around for quite some time, done lots of stuff.
That's right. Kory has been around for a long time. Kory's like a dinosaur compared to Ryan and I.
Yeah.
So, we're just going to do the regular thing we normally do with the podcast. We're going to start off with our recent builds and just, go from there. We're all going to input on this. So, recent builds. For me, I have not been doing a whole lot. I have been really lazy. I finished a G&G combat machine build that was like all the most expensive parts you could buy, like a BTC Chimera, Retro Arms version 2 gearbox, like the newest one, like with the quick change. And then it had like Prometheus barrel, Pro Win hop-up unit, Riot gears. It just had all the fancy stuff. So it's a lot of fun, and it was cool. Everything really fit well together, surprisingly. And yeah, that's really all I've done, honestly. I've been working on my M16 and DSG, but other than that, like it was just little bits of tuning. I really haven't been doing much. I have been working on these motors I've been trying to get out and get the betas done so I can get them sent out and tested and hopefully destroyed, I guess. I don't know. We'll see how it all goes.
How far along are you in that?
I've ordered the wire.
Okay, that's good.
That's about it. I've taken apart
I bought the parts.
I've taken apart all the armatures I'll be using for test, like, arms, but other than that, I haven't really gotten far with it.
Are you trying to keep it like a constant type of arm, or are you purposely using different arms to see which ones give you better results, if they're different at all, or just kind of whatever you had? Like, what are you...
Well, all arms are essentially the same. I haven't really ran into one that's drastically different. I mean, ZCI arms are the only exception I've seen where they've actually snapped at the shaft base, like at the bases. I've actually seen pictures of them being snapped at the bases, and that's just a stupid issue, so I'm going to try to avoid using... anything ZCI or SHS. So I'm going to try to lean towards Kory because that seems to be one of the greatest, as far as the amount they can put out, distributor, and stuff like that. And so I can find their arms pretty, relatively easily in, their 32 TPA ferrite motors and their 28 TPA ferrite motors and all that stuff. So, yeah, Kory seems to be a pretty good base armature, so I'm going to go with that.
Seems like a solid choice. They're tried and proven.
Yeah, I mean, you stick a 32 TPA armature from Kory in a neodymium can, it'll pull anything, and that armature will probably never burn out. The only way it's going to break down is if you push it past its voltage limit, or you just use it for so long that it eventually just wears out through entropy. So,
I've had, to my knowledge, I've had only one Kory motor fail, and it actually shed a winding. I have no idea how old it was. Got the gun used it for a long time. I put it through another 100,000 rounds or so before the winding finally it appears to have snapped. Don't know what caused it.
Wow.
But it was repeated use on 14.8.
Could have been like a spike in voltage or something funny.
It's possible. The wiring on the gun, it was in an M60, an AMK M60. The wiring was a little funky on it, so it easily could have been a spike, something. I'm switching back and forth between 14.8 and the 7.4.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty cool build. But that's pretty much all my recent activities, so I haven't really been doing a whole lot. I've just been kind of doing little bits here and there, kind of cooling off for a little bit. So that's my whole top, so I'll throw it over to Kory, see what he's been doing.
I have two builds I've been working on. One that I'm just now starting to finish up is a VSR build. I wanted to build a nice bolt action. I've had several that have used all sorts of parts, be it PDI or Laylax, but I've always bought them used, really cheap, and then resold them for profit. Parts were always used. There was mistakes. I didn't want to deal with mistakes. I wanted a nice bolt action. I really like them. I think they're really cool rifles. Not really much of a sniper for myself, but I really enjoy target practice with them. But I wanted a rifle that I didn't have to clean up someone else's mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Best parts. It's a full PDI build. I built the whole thing from scratch. Found a Laylax wood stock for it. Didn't even realize they existed until I went digging them up.
Or
the barrel, the receiver.
Style?
Yeah, it's a VSR 10 style.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a really solid rifle. It turned out really nice. I've got It's TDC'd. It's actually used as an internal TDC that I purchased from a fellow I found online. It uses two parts. The arm is split in two. The top part of the arm has it's got threads in it. The bottom part is the one that still rotates. So the screw screws into the top of the arm to push the bottom arm down that actually applies the hop. But the benefit of it is there's no external nut. I still need to get a grub screw, but once I get a grub screw, the top of the barrel would be completely flush. I'll still have the TDC, but I won't have that nut, the screw that's sticking out from the top of it.
Oh, that's a cool plus.
Right now, all I'm waiting on.
My too.
Yeah.
I still have a giant screw at the top of my upper receiver on my SR25. Looks ugly as shit.
Yeah, I had two of the rifles I had. I just didn't like it. I mean, it worked great, and the performance was awesome, but it was like, I don't know.
Some random screw just kind of sticking up here.
Yep. Nearing the end of that.
I try to hide it with the scope, though. I put the scope right over it, even if the eye relief sucks. Wherever the screw ends, that's where the scope goes.
Jesus, a big old scope.
Yeah.
The other build I'm working on is a PTW. I actually managed to get my hands on I found a really good deal on a PTW. It's an 07. It was basically in brand new condition. But I just finished this afternoon DSG it. Put in an M150 spring into the cylinder I had, and getting a really awesome, consistent 380 or 385 to 388 FPS with 2 at 31 RPS.
The the 9-tooth DSG makes it just super easy to get good FPS out of. I really want one of those.
It's really
Do they
nice,
have
and I think
for the PTW? I didn't know
yes.
if they did. Oh, awesome.
Yes, they do. And I know I'm still having FPS leaks and issues with that. I don't trust the cylinder I have in there, but I don't really feel like paying $250 for another cylinder setup.
Yeah.
That's the one that I need, considering that's half the price I paid for the gun.
Oh, nice.
Well, even if it's like brand new, it's still, what, a 7-year-old cylinder then? If it's the 07?
I'm not sure how old the cylinder is, actually.
Right? Am I doing math right, or am I fanning one?
Yeah, no, it's about 7 or 8 years old. It's 2015. So,
Yeah, so maybe it's a stock cylinder still.
It's an M130 cylinder. I don't know if that's the one it came with. It's nice that it is steel, but it's not a bore-up cylinder, which I learned that they make.
Huh.
But it is heavily ported. Oh gosh, this weekend I went to a friend's house who's a very good PTW tech. He was helping me learn a lot about it. For years we've gone back and forth about AEGs versus PTWs. We were talking about trying to. We put in the spring before I got the DSG. I didn't get the DSG till today. I was having really ridiculous FPS issues. He gave me 2 springs. One is an M150 and one is an M165. Both of them were doing only 1.8 joules with 4s coming out of the gun. We could not figure out what was going on. We tried his he had an M130 cylinder, and it was doing the exact same thing. It was even doing a little bit higher with it was about like 1.9 joules coming out of the gun. Could not figure out what was going on. He found sometime in the past, he figured out that if you tape over the cylinder hole, that your FPS will go up in a PTW. I don't understand how that works. It doesn't really work with AEGs from what I've seen.
Yeah, it doesn't really work.
We tried it out with the PTW. Had a wild idea. In the location we were, we didn't have access to tape of any sort. We had duct tape, but that didn't work. It was too thick. It wouldn't fit into the receiver after we put it over the cylinder.
Yeah.
Well, he had cut himself on the gun earlier and had a Band-Aid. Well, we had a couple other Band-Aids.
Oh, no way.
So, we took one of the Band-Aids, cut one of the sticky parts off, covered up the hole with the sticky part, completely sealed over. It was even one of the breathable Band-Aids. This is what makes it even more ridiculous. Covered it up, we slid it into the cylinder and chronoed it and jumped a full joule.
Oh my god.
It jumped from 1.8 to 2.7 joules.
Jeez.
It was like, this is dumb. That should not have worked. I still don't understand how covering up that cylinder port.
Was it that severely under-volumed of a setup then?
Apparently.
Oh. That's so
Apparently
weird.
It was. I mean, the barrel length is only 275. So I don't understand why covering it up worked as well as it did, and I don't understand. I still am baffled that it was a Band-Aid that we used to do it.
Wait, so the Band-Aid didn't fall off either?
Nope, Band-Aid stayed put. We pulled it out and turned it over so we could get a picture of it working.
Oh my god. That's awesome. I never would have thought of that.
I'm gonna go stick a Band-Aid on my AEG cylinder.
Yeah, I'm really tempted to go back to AEGs and like try it out and be like, hey, this is ported. I wonder if I just tape this up, if that's going to change how the FPS is.
That's pretty sick, though. And strange.
Yeah, it's super strange. But yeah, I guess besides trying to fix the compression, I don't know really if there's anything to fix with the compression. My friend has one of his PTWs is down to he gets less than an FPS variance on several of his, and I would love to have that with mine, but not quite sure yet what magic he uses and what I haven't figured out.
See,
it's been fun. It's been a really interesting platform.
I want to get my hands on a PTW or a CTW or DTW weapon system just to kind of figure out how it works. I mean, they're not a whole lot different to AEGs, but they're different. Like, the basic functions of it are, like, the same, but I want to see how the whole thing works.
Yeah.
So
I know that A&K makes a really cheap PTW-inspired gun. However, obviously I don't own it, so I don't look into it too much. I think there are parts of it that aren't true of the PTW. Like, for example, I know that they use, like, standard AEG motors, I think, in the A&K PTW version. I don't know how that works, but there were... So this is what I mean. Like, the only stuff I know about it are, like, stuff I've just kind of heard or seen posted, so I have absolutely no idea if they were true or not. But I do know they make a cheaper PTW variant that does accept the DSG PTW gears, because that's how I heard about it. Someone was showing off a build.
yeah, there's some weird G&D DTW brand that I want to look into.
My father purchased a G&D when they first came out. That was my first experience working with them way back, I guess it was a couple of years ago. Ended up selling it because it was such garbage.
Oh, really?
According to the same friend that helped me out, he keeps up with this stuff. Of course, he's, I guess, similar to us, but when it comes to PTWs. According to him, the G&Ds are now OEM by Celsius, and are apparently a lot better quality than what... don't know if that helps. I'd still do a lot more research. I don't know how much I'd really put faith into what I just said.
Yeah.
How much actual knowledge there is behind that.
Yeah, I need to, I really want to put a lot of research into this stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've been doing. Ryan, what you been up to?
Yeah, I haven't been doing all too much, actually. As I was telling you guys earlier, I just got back from a vacation, and I started a new job today, so I've had a pretty hectic schedule. I haven't really been doing too much airsoft teching. But when it comes to my personal builds, I have a list in the Notes app on my iPhone of all the stuff that I have to do and get done or plan to do. And I swear every single night I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's perfect, it's done. And then every single morning I add more to it. So I never can accomplish a goal. I'll set one, I'll get to it, and then I'll decide it wasn't enough and I'll set a new one. It's really annoying, and my wallet does not like me for that. But so I've more been planning recently than actually building. The most recent thing I've built is I added the last stage of externals onto my new DSG setup. I basically took the old gearbox, hop-up, barrel, motor, all the guts, dropped it into a just completely new receiver set that I built up from scratch. New externals. Everything was just there was no base gun in this. Everything was kind of bought pieces and put together. First time I had done that for myself. I've done it for customers a lot, but every single gun I personally have owned since then, it was some really cheap China clone AEG that I gutted and redid the internals on, got it for cheap. That's really high. This is the first expensive gun I've ever owned. I still have a wrong-threaded barrel, though. I have a clockwise threaded outer barrel, and I only own counterclockwise flash hiders and suppressors, so I have to get my hands on a clockwise one. But after that, this build will be done.
I think I'd actually suggest getting a converter,
Oh,
It'd be a lot cheaper than getting a new barrel or getting a different flash hider.
You are right. The problem is that I have one of the, I don't know if you know what it looks like, but the GMP MOTS wire cutter key mods. And it's like a specific look where I want the flash hider to be in a certain spot. It's the reason why I dump money on the key mod itself.
Yeah, so, I understand that. Definitely understand that.
Yeah, it's like this is the only gun I've ever splurged money on external, so I want it to be the way it should look, I guess, even if that means wasting money. But you live and you learn. I either ordered the wrong one or sent the wrong threading for the outer barrel, but not too big of a deal. Yeah, that's basically all I've been doing. I mean, I have a shit ton of plans, I guess. This my old Scar. I'm gonna bring that back. I'm converting that into a different DSG. I'm trying. My goal is to get an M190 9-tooth DSG for outdoor play, and then I'll have my DSG I was just talking about for indoor play. I still have a bunch of backup guns just kind of sitting there. I'm working on an AK SR25K as a DMR. Actually, I acquired the gun through a trade, and it's just kind of been. I finished the externals, and I started working on a TDC mod and an ER hopped barrel, but I haven't actually opened the gearbox yet or fired the gun beyond making sure that it worked and I wasn't given a product that I didn't think I traded for. So that's a project sitting behind the Scar, which is behind the DSG, which is behind all this other crap I have to do. So it's just a lot of waiting with my new schedule. But other than that, I think we can move on to the next topic. And this week, we always talk about a certain product or brand and either review the brand or talk about the product pros and cons. This week, we decided to do the Pro-Win hop-up chamber, mainly because it's always been popular. I think, personal honesty, I think it's been popular because of the way it looks more than the way it performs. But it is a good pop-up. It's very popular. A lot of people own it. A lot of people will praise it. But it's one of those products where it's looked highly, I guess, in the airsoft community. So people will start giving it praise without owning it, or people will start bashing it because it's like the product that all Polar Star users buy in their setup or whatever. So I guess I'll let Kory start talking about it. We can all just kind of chime in when we think of things.
I think its popularity really rose because, as far as I'm aware, it's really the first dial hop-up chamber that's widely acceptable to buckings. Of course, the Madbull one was out first and had been out for a couple of years, but it doesn't have the most aftermarket compatibility with other buckings, and that's something that the Pro-Win didn't suffer from nearly as much as the Madbull chamber did. I think the Madbull chamber also had issues with fitting in different guns. As far as I'm aware, the Pro-Win doesn't have as many issues as that. I think that's besides its fancy shiny blue look. That's part of the reason why it's popular. Polar Stars, I think, also affects that a lot. People see Polar Star shoot really well, and it's like, oh, it has the Pro-Win hop-up chamber, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, they want their guns to shoot just as well. They get the same hop-up chamber.
Yeah.
A lot of people go through that route. I imagine when Polar Stars were first coming out, I'm sure you go back and look, find that some person found that his Pro-Win worked really well, and it just kind of snowballed from there. More people getting them, saying, oh, hey, this worked great, I'm going to grab one too, and then you just kind of have to start, more and more people have the same hop-up unit for this specific system. It makes it just more and more popular.
Yeah, at the field I go to, I go to about once or twice every month, and there's a good amount of Polar Star users there. Out of like 100 people there, probably 25 have a Polar Star, so you see them quite often. And every single, or some HPA system, they either have SMP or Polar Star, so I'm throwing those both together, kind of. But they all run Pro-Win hop-up chambers. Like, all of them. I've never seen one of them without a Pro-Win hop-up chamber. I've actually tried to look for it, because I was just, like, kind of curious. I was like, wow, everybody here runs a Pro-Win hop-up chamber with their Polar Star. And one time I was sitting in their, like, storefront. It was like in between games and that kind of stuff. I was just sitting around looking around because I don't go to airsoft stores very often. And they had one of their techs working on a Pro-Win hop-up chamber install for a Pro-Win build. And like, okay, so I'll say something real quick about myself. I don't like it when people are just blatantly wrong, and they're like, yeah, this is the best thing ever. And then so I a lot of the time walk up to people. I'm like, no, it's not. And I get into little arguments like that. That's just who I am.
You're wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I'm like, no, you're wrong. I'm sorry. I'm like, my DSG with a low nox hop-up chamber shoots farther than your Polar Star. I'm sorry, but like I do that kind of stuff. So I heard one tech, like he had no idea what he was doing really. He was just like sitting there. He's like, yeah, this Pro and hop-up chamber is the best hop-up chamber you can buy. Really, the rotary hop-up design makes it awesome, and it's just like CNC'd and all this stuff, and fits really well and all these things. And he's modifying it to fit, by the way, while he's doing this. And so I found that kind of funny. And like, what even makes it more, like, what even infuriates me more about this is when it's like little kids that he's talking to about this, and they're like, oh man, $40 hop-up chamber? I want that for my birthday, you know? And so like that really gets to me. So I was like, no, it's not really the best hop-up chamber. And so we went back and forth. I'm like, it's not CNC'd, it's 6061 cast, it's, you know, it's this and that. It's not, you know, everything that's made out to be. The rotary design may be good, but it applies hop-up at an angle, so therefore it's kind of, you know, void there because it doesn't really accomplish what it's supposed to do. Granted, it's stable, but it doesn't apply hop-up correctly. And I just basically ended on that it's kind of overpriced for what it is. And I was being pretty kind and polite as I was saying all this stuff. But that's basically my main beef with it. Because the rotary hop-up design is awesome. Like, don't get me wrong, I love rotary-style hop-ups. But there's only been one rotary-style hop-up unit that I've seen that does it right. And it's ICS. They make a fantastic rotary hop-up design where it actually applies the hop-up straight down, as opposed to everybody like Crytek, Retro Arms, Pro-In, VFC, etc. that apply it at an angle. And that kind of, you know, application isn't as good as what it's supposed to be. Sure, it's stable, but that's about it. So that's basically my thing on the Pro and Hop unit.
Now, something else I noticed with it is, you guys can comment if you've noticed the same thing. The window in the Pro and Hop-Up unit for the nub to actually go down onto the buffing. Did you notice that was a lot smaller than like other Hop-Up units?
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Okay, because that was something else I noticed. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all why you'd restrict the amount of surface in a more expensive Hop-Up marketed to more expensive builds.
That's another thing about the ICS hop-up chamber. Like, I have one right here somewhere. Hold on, let me find it. Wait, let me find. Yeah, here it is. Okay, I have it right here. And the hop-up window.
Them in the bin under.
The window is massive. The window is massive on these things, so it's awesome.
Well, you got to think I mean, yes, it's nice to have really large windows, but Pro-Ins weren't designed for pop-up modification. They were designed for small circular nubs, and they're as wide as they need to be for those nubs. They weren't designed for these aftermarket flat hops, or to someone modify it for an M nub so they can R-hop it and that sort of thing.
Granted.
As far as what it was designed to do, it does it very well.
Oh no, I completely agree. But it's funny to me to look at it, and I'm sure you guys will look at it the same way, where everyone praises it as as like Ryan was saying, it's the best hop-up. It's the one where if you spend all this money on a Polar Star, you'd be stupid to not buy the Pro and hop-up because it's like it's so good. It's made for the Polar Star. Some people even say it gets that contorted, and it's just like everyone praises it as being like you can't get any better, but it's not made to get any better than a stock hop-up, which is like I always find that really funny, where it's made to be a good stock hop-up. And it's not made to accept the mods like a flat hop or an R-hop or a flat nub or any of the variations of that type of modding of your barrel and hop-up. Yet it's still marketed and people talk about it as if it's the best thing out there.
Yeah, that's my whole little beef with it.
It's just overhyped like lots of things get.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not bad either. It does its job well. It's just that everyone talks about it like it's like God of hop-ups, and it's not. That's not what it's meant to be.
Like it's Jesus Christ incarnate of a hop-up unit.
It has the same problem that KWA did years ago, when they just got so hyped, and everyone's like, these guns really aren't all that great. It's like they're failing, they're falling, they're a little different here and there, but it's like they're not really that much different from anything else. This LiPo-ready baloney is baloney. It's not there.
Yeah, they would talk about like their really high gauge wire, but it's only high gauge outside the gearbox. Once you go in, it's like 18 gauge.
That defeats the whole purpose because the resistance goes down to the thinner wire, right? Or the path with the most resistance, if it's in the same series, will basically guide the rest of the circuit as far as I know. So having 14 gauge wire outside the gearbox and then 16 gauge wire, or I think it goes back to 18 gauge wire inside the gearbox to fit. It's as if you have 18 gauge wire throughout the entire thing, because it has to go through that resistance path of the 18 gauge wire anyway, so it's not really like benefiting you at all.
Well, see, that's actually, that's actually not very true, because it does go faster through the 14 gauge wire, but then when it hits the 18 gauge wire, it slows down. I do know that much. Like, I'm positive on that one. But, it still kind of defeats the purpose, though, because you have nice 14 gauge wire half through the gun, and the other half of the gun you have 18 gauge wire. So you're kind of like, you're still slowing yourself down.
It'd be just like having a 4-lane interstate that just drops down to 1 lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, it's still only 1 lane of traffic that's getting through. Having these 4 lanes behind it isn't helping.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a bottleneck. It might go faster through the thicker part, but it still has to go through that singular part in the end, so it ends up being the same.
Mm-hmm. But, that's just like KWA, bleh.
Yeah. I have a lot of stories about those guns.
Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion, but have we pretty much covered everything on Pro-Win?
What else to cover? I think we got pretty much all of it. Dial hop up, but it applies hop unevenly. It's cast alloy. It looks really cool, but it has trouble fitting in some receivers.
I have a question. What do you guys think about the screw they include for the front versus the spring?
I think that's kind of cool, but I will say I won't say it's much of an improvement.
O-rings anyway, so I don't even use it.
Yeah, I use O-rings. That's what I use to space my hop-up unit.
Yeah,
I think it's cool, but I don't really see it as like a massive benefit.
I've actually seen it having issues. I found where if it's hard to get just right, where with if you use a spring or O-rings, you have a little bit of added play there.
Yeah.
But if your hop-up unit is pushed too hard up against your gearbox, it can cause issues, just like if it's too far away. If it's pressing too hard, if it's blocking it too significantly, you'll start having feeding issues or FPS issues. It's displacing stuff. Even though you can get everything closed up, it's shifting. It's just too hard. There's no spring, and it just causes stuff to come up.
See, yeah, I don't
much care for it.
I don't think it's an improvement, but I don't really think it's it's a decent idea. I kind of it's cool, but it's not an improvement, so it's kind of like useless. And that's what I almost always use O-rings, like the little O-rings on the barrel, to space the hop-up unit against the gearbox shell, because the spring is sometimes not strong enough to do it. Sometimes on Lonex hop-up chambers where it's got that thick O-ring where it fits into the gearbox shell, so the spring doesn't always want to push it properly. So I'll always use O-rings to fix that problem. So yeah.
My biggest issue with the Pro-Win, maybe not biggest, but when Kory brought up the screw, basically exactly what you said was that with the screw, it's a hard surface, like there is no give to it. So when you're using a spring or O-rings, you can always put more than needed, and they'll squish or compress, and they'll make up for the lost space, as long as you don't put a million of them on there. But with a screw, you can't do that. So unless you tune it to basically perfect length, it's going to be really, really forceful up against the side of the gearbox, or it's going to have give, and it's going to have space between the gearbox, which could create a leak between your nozzle and bucking, or just improper feeding if it's just sitting there loosely.
Yeah, but I think
the hop up.
I think we've pretty much covered a majority of things to discuss about the Pro-Win hop-up chamber. I'd say our general consensus of it is that, while it has some benefits going for it, it certainly has some things going against it. And those things going against it, at least in my opinion, I don't know if I speak for Kory and Ryan when I say this, make it, not worth as much as the good. It doesn't make up. The good things don't make up for the bad things, is what I'm trying to say. So that's what I think. I don't know if that's what Kory and Ryan think as well, but that's personally what I think with it. So experience-wise.
Yeah, I know that I personally don't use them in my own gun builds. I only use it if a customer really wants it or provides it.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so we are ready to move on to our next topic, which is our segment of short debate / discussion. Our topic today is the quote-unquote best gearbox shell. We're taking into account price, material, durability, quality control, etc. Basically, everything that goes into making this gearbox shell, and the final product is what we're going to be judging. So, this is one that I'm really kind of torn on because there's a lot of really cool gearbox shells out there. Personally, I think the best gearbox shell right now is the newest generation Retro Arms gearbox shell. The one that doesn't have any fitment issues as far as I've worked on it. I'm working on one right now. It has no fitment issues with SHS trigger contacts or a standard trigger contact versus a BTC Chimera. They all fit in. It just drops right into the receiver, no issues. It is quick change spring, so it's fantastic for that kind of work. It has a hole for AOE, so you can easily check your angle of engagement, and it's made out of 70-75 aluminum, so it's incredibly tough. And it doesn't have fitment issues with the cylinder like the previous generation did. So it's got a lot of certain pluses going for it, and that's what I personally think is the quote-unquote best gearbox shell, because it's actually pretty well priced compared to previous CNC gearbox shells made by, I can't think of the name of them now.
Cradle box?
Yeah, Cradle. I couldn't think of the name of that. Wasn't Cradle made out of 6061?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and it was really
actually 6064.
Oh, okay. And it was actually really expensive too, wasn't it?
They were.
I think
they were $300. They're now selling them for $265.
Jeez, I mean, that's really weird. But yeah,
the name they've been around as that, like the CNC gearbox now.
They are 6061.
Oh, okay.
I have it pulled up in front of me.
All right, cool. But personally, I think the newest generation Retro Arms version 2, like the version 2 QSC or QCS gearbox shell is probably the best one out there right now. I've had no issues with it. It's incredibly tough. It's very on spec, and it's just pretty well priced. So, and they have pretty good customer service too. Pretty good, I'm saying that. So, that's my take on it.
I do think they're really good. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was just gonna say, what do you think about it?
I do think that the RAs are very good, but I have been thinking a lot about this. RAs starting to show the same kind of issues that they did with, I guess that Lonex started to show, where they are starting to have quality control issues.
Right.
People getting the gearbox showing up that are missing threadings in some of the gear holes that are anodized past where certain parts aren't fitting. I myself, I had the opportunity to test the prototype of the split shell, and even in the prototype, I had 3 different RA triggers from different generations and none of them fit. Like RA shell with the Retro Arms trigger, and they did not fit together.
Right.
But other people have issues with different parts fitting, especially triggers seems to be the most common thing to pop up. Other filament issues seem to be fine. They don't seem really having issues there. A good friend of mine is having issues with his motor alignment. I think I'm not entirely sure how their hop-ups are working. Sadly, the one that I have, the one that was sent with the prototype, is their older generation. It's not their newer generation that's supposed to be more compatible with different types of buckings and hop-ups, or buckings in general. The one that I have, I really had to test. I had to figure out what worked, what didn't work. To my knowledge, the new ones have the newer style hop-up, so maybe they won't be as difficult to use. But the gearboxes certainly aren't without their flaws. They definitely have their issues.
Yeah. QC seems to be the biggest issue.
Hold on, Kory. The hop-ups from the prototype you had and the newer ones, what's the actual difference between them?
According to Retro Arms, speaking with them, the new ones use their new. It's the same difference between their first generation hop-up and their second generation hop-up. The second generation hop-up is supposed to fix a lot of the issues they have with different buckings not fitting well. I don't know exactly what they did to change that. I don't know if they changed the positioning of the barrel or they just changed the width, made it wider. I couldn't really tell you for sure. If I had to guess, they changed the positioning. They either moved the barrel further forward or further back. Judging with some of the other things that I helped test with them, if I had to guess, that's what was changed between the first gen and the second gen. But beyond that, I really couldn't tell you what the difference is.
Yeah. Because I know you were talking to me about that a while back. Because I actually think about buying one of the split gear boxes, and I was talking to you about it, and you were telling me the biggest issue you noticed was that the bucking and barrel combination to get it to feed was extremely picky.
When I first got it, I initially had to use a stock bucking from something. I don't know what it was from. It was just a bucking drawer. The lips were very wide to the point that if I just sat it down on the table, a BB would just fall right through them.
Yeah.
If anything else, it would get jammed in it. I couldn't get it to feed reliably. Even at best, it would feed for a couple rounds, then it would kind of start to jam, and it would like push it through, and then it would just get to the point where it would just every single shot, nothing would happen. But this bucking where the BB would fall through, once I got it installed into the gun, the BB would stop at the lips where it's supposed to. It would seal really well. Had a lovely pop, but it was a very soft bucking. I was curious because applying hop or using heavier BBs, the pop would disappear, and I suspect that the bucking lips would break the seal because of the added resistance from having hop up applied to it. But I wasn't able to actually prove it because it still fired consistently with or without the hop. And the system I'm testing it in is a very over volume system. It's a full stroke bore up with a 265 millimeter 6.01.
Oh, fun.
So even with the pop would disappear, I would still have jewel creep. I still saw performance that I should have seen coming from the system. I just don't know if it's the full performance that I should expect. But I mean, that's the negatives of it. The ARL retention system is fantastic. You never have to modify the ARL. Never have to pull it out. You can just flip it around, and it completely pulls itself out of the way of all the gears, all that system. The split system is very nice. It does lock together very well, especially with an SSG. I suspect with the DSG you'll have a little bit of issues with it just due to the tappet plate having to line up. I noticed that with DSG I had to stick something into it and pull the tappet to get it to shut around the bevels unless I got it, or around the tappet cams unless I got it lined up just perfectly. It was a lot easier to do with an SSG. I'm using it with a VFC body. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful with the VFC body. Being able to split the gun apart and put it back together in 30 seconds, being able to change out a spring that fast is absolutely fantastic. Not having to worry about pulling the stock off or fitting it back together. Just being able to manipulate the gun so quickly and easily is really nice. I don't
really
know if
want
something
one of
like
those.
a GMP, you could put a nut to hold the buffer tube on, something similar. Definitely something I'd look at. Ryan, what you're about to say?
I really want one of those just because, like, I personally really like split gearbox shells. I have an ICS split gearbox shell, my M16, and ICS M16, so, But I really, really like the concept of split gearbox shells. But I would have brought up more about RA, but I have no experience with the split shell. I have experience with their solid shells, like their one-piece ones, but I don't have experience with their split ones, unfortunately. I really, really want to get a hold of one of those so I can just, get a hold of one and get one working. And I have a GMP body that I really want to put it in. So I'm super excited for whenever I do get to hold one, and I hope one day maybe Retro Arms will send me one, just because they want me to review it. A little bit of a shameless plug. I'm at 2,100 subscribers, so I mean, But yeah,
pretty popular on the YouTube scene.
I'm Airsoft famous.
The next Jet Desert Fox.
Yes, pretty much. But
Jet Desert Fox of AEGs, of gearboxes.
Yeah.
Woo. But so Ryan, what do you think about that is the quote unquote best gearbox shell?
So, I mean, I guess because you guys both listed the two most popular RA shells, I'll go with something a little more affordable, I guess. I would, if you asked me this same question a couple months ago, I would have said Lonex, hands down. But I've seen way too many quality control issues in their shells recently. I know I was telling you last week, and I haven't told Kory yet, the most recent one I've got for a customer came concavely bent, where the two halves of the shell actually wouldn't mate with each other. It was the back corner where the spring guide goes and the front corner where the cylinder head goes. Those are the only 2 points that would actually touch unless I physically put it in a vise and force it together.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a major issue, obviously, because it threw off the gear axle alignment and the spacing for everything in the box. Everything was loose. That took a while to fix. Then I've seen reports of them just coming. Some are finished differently than others. I think they're on the market, and they had the first generation, which had some problems. Second generation was like spot on. That's what everyone raved about. It got really popular. Then they went to third, then to fourth, really, really quickly, and both have seen a lot. I think it's just down to quality control because there are random issues that are different across people. There are a lot of reports on the forum I help moderate, Airsoft Society, of people buying the Lonex shells and just random problems like spacing issues in the parts, fitment issues in parts that haven't been fitment issues in other Lonex shells. My issue where I literally got a bent gearbox shell that didn't fit together properly. There's way too many random issues with that. And because of that, my vote has to go to the GMP gearboxes. Not even because they're special at all. It's a normal gearbox. I barely have any fitment issues with them at all. They're extremely strong. I think they're my favorite stock shell to reuse. And they usually come with GMP's bearings, which are one of the only 3 bearings that I use anyway. So it's a win-win, I guess. For the money, I think that's the strongest and easiest to use gearbox that I've personally come in contact with. And if you're not looking to spend $100 on an RA shell or $150 on the split gearbox, now that Lonex is becoming really, really inconsistent with the quality control, if you can find a GMP version 2 box, that's probably the strongest bang for your buck you're going to get, in my opinion.
I think that has a lot of weight behind it as far as bang for your buck. Yes, the retro arm shells are really, really nice. They're $155, and while that is a very good price for what they are you going to use them? I mean, they're strong. They're so very strong. Are you actually going to push it so that strength is important?
Yeah, that's another good thing to bring up.
Are going to be fine with the GMP gearbox or just the stock shell that they have. GMPs do have good specs. I've never had issues with them, something not fitting inside of it. They're cheap. They're what? You can get a full gearbox for $50?
Yeah, something around
50 or 60. And they're even like the air seal parts for GMP aren't even that bad. I personally would reuse them myself. So you're already getting bonus stuff aside from just a shell for a third of the price of the split and half the price of the RA shell.
Yeah. See, okay, so that's a really good point of view about the GMP gearbox shell. I do have an issue with them almost always, but it's not necessarily like it's not inside the gearbox, it's outside of it. They never want to fit right with any receiver for me. They always want to pull back, and like they always have receiver misalignment issues, which isn't that hard to solve. It's just throwing a washer between the lower receiver and the gearbox shell, and it fixes it. But that's just always a little problem I've had with them. It's just been so irritating. I don't know why I always have that problem with them.
I threw one in a D-Boys receiver without an issue.
Oh, you did?
D-Boys receivers are made with such poor quality control. I could have just got the one lucky one that was made right.
Right.
That's true.
But what Kory's saying about how the retro arm shell, it's so tough that are you really going to need how tough it is? Like, do you really need that? So that's another good point to bring up. Because
unless you're running like a 9-tooth SP190 DSG, I mean, it's gonna run fine. I had one for a long time that I ran with a 9-tooth M170 build. Zero issues. It's still strong as it ever has, even though I did replace it with a retro arm. Well, I replaced it with a cradle first and then a retro arms. But it never broke. It's still in great condition. I think I stuck it in a different gun, and it's still running strong. It's very impressed with the box, or that one specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I know. I plan on running a an M190 9-tooth DSG and my Gen 2 Lonex box, actually, with I'm getting one of the it's an airsoft company in the Czech Republic called Airsoft Pro. I'm getting one of their Scar L hop-up chambers they make with a CNC mill. But the thing with them is that there's supposed to be an STS built into it. So I'm gonna hope and pray that it actually works as a proper STS. I'm gonna pair that with the Lonex shell, and then I think I shouldn't get any problems with the SP190 F9 the Escue build. However, in my experience, the Lonex shell is probably the same strength as a GMP shell. The Lonex Gen 2s, the ones with the cylinder port in the back, like the one that they had in production for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I mean, like, I could interchange those shells comfortably, and I would be just as willing to put the GMP through the same build.
I personally like to have ultimate toughness, so I'm going with RA. But that's because I really like to push a lot of things to their limit. Like, I really do. In my P90, I did an M160 or M150 or M160 full auto build. It was like 35 RPS. I wanted to just see if I could break the version 6 gearbox shell. I used faucet washers for AOE correction, and like I used one faucet washer on the cylinder head just to kind of like give it something so it's not beating up against metal. A little small ring on that, and then I stuck metal washers behind the aluminum piston head, and I ran it at M150 full auto, and it was like 35 RPS, and it was awesome. I ran that for a little bit to see if I could break it, and I never could.
Yeah, I have
Sounds awesome.
my last customer build that was like a full from scratch build. I have a 43 round per second M140. What was it? It was Siege Tech 10-1s, Lonex A1, Lonex gearbox, Lonex compression parts, Lonex trigger contacts, SHS piston, standard crap in there. Modified. No, he had Lonex bushing, Lonex everything except for Siege Tech gears and SHS piston, I think. On a Sistema M140, I want to say. But that was, but I short stroked it for him later on because that's what he wanted FPS wise. But I think it was getting 455, 460 FPS on a .2 at 43 rounds a second.
That is really inefficient.
I wanted to leave it at that and just give it to him. It would have been awesome.
That like drivetrain setup is like incredibly inefficient.
Oh, I know, but it was so fun to shoot.
That's so stupid. Like that your motor grip must have turned into a sun.
Honestly, it wasn't that bad, considering that I didn't test it extensively until I short stroked it like 4 teeth.
Yeah, see, like a short stroke makes it better, but still, that's like I wouldn't even run a 16 TPA motor on 10-1s.
It shoots like 3 now, but it was a fun build.
That's awesome.
A while back, I had a 417 when I first got it, and I did a very similar build. But I used an A2 instead of an A1, and I had an M150 instead of the M140.
Yeah.
I short stroked it 3 teeth, and I got a 46 RPS out of it with a big old 11.1 on the back.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was nice.
That motor did get warm.
Just a little
definitely
warm.
remember that heating up. But I guess I didn't push it too hard until I blew the front of the gearbox off.
I was just gonna ask, how did the gearbox shell hold up to that? Because I know that 417 is pretty weak.
I think I used it 3 games, and it didn't help that it was through winter.
Oh
and
yeah.
It was terrible. I had basically sold the gun. I hadn't got the money yet. I decided if I was going to do this, I wanted to use an M4 instead of this big gun. And I had sold the gun. I was waiting on the guy to send me the money. And I had some friends over. I was showing them. I was just kind of bragging a bit with it. And I showed it to them. And I shot the gun a couple times. And all of a sudden, it whines and grinds through the gears. And I was like, oh no. And I strip it apart. And the first thing I see is the gearbox shell cracked. The spring's broken. It was several things went wrong all at once. And that's when I saw that the shell was cracked. And I was like, I can't sell this anymore. that was a hard, painful, because I got a good price on it, and it was just like, I'm sorry, I can't sell this to you. It's broken.
Yeah, imagine if you didn't test it to your friends though, when you gave it to the guy, and then he brings it out to his first game and it breaks.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad it broke when I had it, but that was I ended up basically downgrading it back down to stock, and I used the parts for the M4 build that I built afterwards, but.
Isn't there a mod for the you can put an XCR gearbox shell? I think that's right.
You can. It's split, but it's not any stronger than the VFC. Or sorry, than the 417.
Yeah.
So.
But it being
nice
split,
but not really.
I tried. I know I heard that somewhere.
It being a split would probably be a little bit of an advantage compared to the other VFC shell because it takes down horribly. Like, it's not a horrible takedown per se, but it's a really weird, different takedown.
So that screw in the back under the buffer tube is odd to get to. I'm glad I had special screwdrivers, made it a lot easier, but that was weird. And the screw on the side that holds the selector plate in, those strip pretty often. Mine didn't strip, thankfully, but some others that I worked on for a couple people one was stripped and the other was on its way out. I had to glue them in. And that seems to have worked just fine. But those were kind of weak.
Yeah, I always find it weird when you have, like, I would expect a D-Boys or an AK or even a JG gun to just, like, strip all the bolts on it or all the hex keys, not the hex keys, the hex screws get stripped after a while. But when you buy, like, a GMP or a VFC and then it happens, I get, like, depressed inside. Like, I paid so much more money to have nicer externals and it still does the same shit.
Yeah.
Especially the 417, that's marketed as like their nicest, not now the stupid G28 thing, but it's marketed as their nicer end of their nice guns. I haven't had a chance to work on one yet though. That's something I really want to do.
So, so we can get a quick consensus. Ryan, you think GMP is the best bang for buck, general best gearbox shell you can go for, everything considered?
I mean, personally, I actually have not had experience with any RA shell yet, so even if I wanted to, I couldn't chime in on them. I'm working on buying a split, but I feel like if they're going to come out with a new generation, or just I want to have more people buy the latest generation to see what more problems arise before I drop the cash on it. And because of that last reason, before I drop the cash on it, I think, in my opinion, the GMP is the best bang for your buck. And, I mean, both of you talk about the RA, so I figured I'd pick a different one to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never had issues with fitting internal parts inside. I've never had issues with it being too weak for a build. I've never had quality control issues like seen in the Lone X, and the Lone X shell alone is like $55. You can buy a GMP complete gearbox for I think somewhere between $60 and $70, even on like e-bike, so not even on the places that might charge a little less for them. And that gives you the shell, the 8mm bearings, an extra set of gears to throw in a gun when you're teching on someone else, a contact set, a Dean's connector. It gives you decent compression parts and another random spring, which again, just like the gears, you just throw them in random builds. But like with all that taken into account, that is well worth the $60 to $70 you'd pay for that, especially considering a Lone X shell of probably the same strength, now maybe even less because the QC issues, is only maybe $15 cheaper, and you don't get all the extra stuff.
E-Bike has the GMB gearboxes for $72.
But overseas, yeah, I knew it was around there.
Overseas has them for about $110, both E-Hobby and Red Wolf.
Wow.
Oh, that's weird. Usually, not Red Wolf, but usually E-Hobby is cheaper than E-Bike.
In this case, it's good. I mean, E-Bike even has it marked down from 85 to 72, but that's significantly cheaper.
Yeah.
Huh.
Than E-Hobby.
Weird. So Kory, what's your take? Your last take, I guess.
I think it's really kind of a toss-up between the Retro Arms or the GMP. I have the same issues with Ryan about the Lone X. They used to be fantastic, but I've had similar issues that he's had with this newer gen being being problematic. The China aluminum shells that go for 90 to 110, the QC on those is just absolutely awful. They're not worth the money that you pay for them because there's no telling what you'll actually get out of the box. The cradles are expensive. They're $265. Now the aluminum they made is still it's 60-61, and it's still very, very strong. It's not 70-75, but for most stuff they're really nice. but the QC is very good. I've had experience with 3 now, and they've all been the exact same. I've had no issues, or I've had several different parts. Everything's gone together very, very well in them. But I mean, they're almost twice the price of a retro arm shell. A little bit of modification is well worth saving $150.
Yeah.
Retro arm's definitely the strongest. It's a few minor QC issues. I worry about the hop-up chambers, but I was able to get mine working without any trouble. I did end up using, I found a garter buckings work really well in them. I think Alan's son with Umbrella has used a Maple Leaf 70-degree bucking in his, and he says it works really well for him. Their prices are really, really good. Something else to consider that is a bit more of a minor issue, but the weight. An aluminum shell is a heck of a lot lighter than the zinc alloy shells that GMP or Lonex are.
Yeah.
I really think I got to give it to the RA split gearbox as being the best shell on the market right now. It actually has a significant number of features more than what their basic generation shells have, and their or what GMP, Lonex, Cradle. They're very, very nice. They're very feature rich. They work really well in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to get one of those so I can actually have because I need to get more hands-on experience with different types of gearbox shells. Because I've basically held every gearbox shell out there besides the Pro and Split and the Cradle and the RA Split. I've held every other one out there now. And so... Pro and
gearboxes are only there for bragging rights. They suck to work on.
They're like $300 to grab, too.
They're a novelty item. They're so difficult to work on.
It's something you hang up and be like, yeah, I got that.
Yep.
And so that's really...
Post pictures of it for your Instagram, of your Facebook.
But
sits on a shelf, doesn't even get put in a gun.
I personally think the newest Retro Arms one-piece shell is probably the best gearbox shell you can buy out there. Granted, I don't have experience on the other ones that Kory does, so I can't speak for the ones he's saying or he's talking about. So, but the newest RA Retro Arms one-piece version 2 gearbox shell has many features as well. It has the same anti-reversal latch system as the Split. It has like the little hole you can see for angle of engagement, which is just awesome. That's just a really cool little feature that nobody really does anymore, besides like modify, and nobody's going to want to buy a modified gearbox shell because it's no different from a regular gearbox shell at all in build quality. So yeah, Retro Arms, it's really tough, relatively cheap for the price, or not for the price, but for what you get, and then just has a lot of features with it too. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, for now I'll stand by my GMP. It does not have the same amount of features as the RA shell. It does not have the quick change spring guide, does not have the AOE hole, the grease, the extra AR latch feature. It just doesn't carry the extra features. But for the price, it's a lot cheaper, and it's still, I think, strong enough for probably 99% of gun builds.
Yeah.
Until you get really, really stressful, like an M190, not even DSG, an M190 DMR for like a Barrett build that you're doing. Until you get up to these levels of stress, like it suits the purpose. It's good enough. So if you want to spend the extra money, if you have the extra money on the RA shell, yes, it's stronger. Yes, it has better features. However, are you going to need stronger than a GMP? Most likely not. So why spend the extra money on it if it's just to say, unless just to say that you have it. Now, for the RA Split, in that, I mean, it's a split gearbox. You can't buy a reliable split gearbox on the market that's compatible with other guns. The Pro-Win isn't on the market anymore. The ICS is only compatible with ICS receivers. So you really only have one option, and that's the RA. Mm-hmm. And Kory has confirmed that it fits well in VFC receivers. It's made to fit for GMP receivers, so it should fit in at least the 2 most popular receivers out there right now, which is good. So it's its own market right now. There isn't anything competing with it. So in my opinion, those are the 2 routes you have. In my opinion, it's GMP or RA Split. However, if you do want the extra protection and the extra features the RA shell offers over a GMP, for example, that is the higher route, I guess. That is the upgrade to the GMP. I think that's good for the gearbox shells. The next topic we want to talk about, we always do questions at the end. Usually Ryan and I and our guest, if they have one, will pick a question we commonly get, or we maybe have just seen while scrolling through the forums or Facebook while someone else was talking because we were bored. But the one that I wanted to bring up was from Van Every. That's both his forum tag and his actual Facebook name. I've known him for a while personally, but he threw out a question on Facebook recently that got pretty popular. He threw out a question actually on our thread on Airsoft Society that Ryan and I made for this podcast specifically, and he wanted to know, does the airsoft world really have a true high-end AEG by definition, and by comparison to cheap guns and China clones? So this sparked a lot of debate. People was like, oh, Polar Star, oh, PTW, oh this, oh that, or the G28. People just kind of started spewing out the more expensive guns, and then some people got really into it and kind of took different angles on the question. So this is one that I think is good to talk about, because is there really a high-end AEG by definition in the airsoft world right now? And in my opinion, there is. However, in my opinion, the term high-end, when paired with AEG, completely refers to external quality and compatibility with parts. Because if you look at the standard AEGs that are sold right now, you have your up to $100 range, which are usually LPEGs. They're usually really, really cheap, made to play for backyard wars. Some of them even have plastic gearbox shells and plastic gears inside of them, because they're not meant to be taken and used as higher-end airsoft guns. Then you have your $100 to $200 range, which is usually your A&Ks, your JGs, your D-Boys, your combat machines, the entry-level guns. The guns that you either, combat machine, you buy it to use it as like a starter gun, as a stock gun. You don't want to upgrade it, you just want something that works for cheap. Or you buy a JG or a D-Boys for maybe an upgrade base, or they have a certain external set that's metal that was cheaper than the higher and expensive versions. Once you get above that, you have your $200 to $300 range, which is more of like the ICS, the Classic Army, the lower end G&P. King Arms has a few in there, but they're scattered throughout a couple ranges. And these guns aren't necessarily superior internally than the previous guns. That they are in ways, but they're not better in every way. But what they're really, like for example, ICS guns, they offer the split gearbox. G&P guns have amazing quality externals. King Arms guns have better quality externals than the lower end. Classic Army metal guns have better quality externals than the lower end. And this is where I think it really takes the cake, I guess, in is there really a high quality AEG, a top tier AEG in today's market? And I think it's completely ruled by externals, because no matter how high up you get in the price bracket, even we were just talking about earlier, the 417s that cost $400, the internals suck. They're just bad. It's a poorly designed shell. It's a stock gearbox with like an M130 equivalent spring. There's not too much special about it on the inside still, and you're still paying so much money for it. What's special is the external quality and the fact that it's a 417. Same with just VFC rifles in general. It's the fact that the externals, that the quality is so high. Now, recently, I think they've actually redone the internal builds. They're replacing the piston, the tappet plate. They're adding a MOSFET inside their guns. They're remaking the bushings, I think. And they're doing an internal makeover, basically, because they're selling $300, $350 guns that still have internals that are barely any better than a JG, for example. Or maybe they're just tuned better than the D-Boys. They're not necessarily that much stronger. I know VFC pistons and tappets like to break or strip very easily. It's a common problem I can think of. The self-shimming gears, when you start building higher stress setups, they don't work the way they're supposed to work. The shells they're not bad shells, but they're not good shells. And when you buy a $300 gun, you don't want something breaking on you. So these are the things, in my opinion, there is a top tier AEG, but it's just the better externals is what makes it top tier, because you're going to have to upgrade or fix any gun inside no matter what you buy.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I'd say that like a lot of the things with high-end AEGs, like if something's labeled as super good, it's because it's because it brings something either new that isn't necessarily that great. Like the AR-57, the P90 AR combination, it was really cool. It had some really cool internals that weren't like it had a steel rack piston. It had 8mm like bushing slots and the old school steel style JG shells that always had 6 or 7mm shell or 6 or 7mm slots, and just had little tiny features like that made it kind of cooler, but it wasn't necessarily high end because it didn't perform better. So it just kind of was like the regular AEG. There was just an M4 with a P90 mag on top of it. It just basically looked like a confused gun, and so that's kind of like why I think a lot of high-end guns out there nowadays are more or less just doing something new that they're not doing well or well enough to make it like super high-end. That's what I'm trying to say, kind of. So I don't know how else to word it. I'm trying to think about that still. Like a lot of high-end guns, they do something different. Like VFC, they have like that rotary style hop-up unit, and so they can advertise that and say, "Oh, this is a huge a plus compared to the standardized hop-up unit." But it's not really, because it has that rotary design where it pushes hop-up down at an angle. So it's not much better at all compared to like D-Boy's hop-up chamber. So what's the point? They do different things that catch the eye, but they don't do it well when you really look at it. So therefore, people think it's high-end.
I don't know. I think I disagree about that. I think there's a lot to say about the quality control of different guns. Yes, the VFCs, GMPs, they might the internals might not be as strong as JG or D-Boys, but you're more likely to pull a VFC or a GMP out of the box and it shoot really well, it shoot really fast than you are a JG or a D-Boys. You're more likely to have better consistency due to the higher quality compression parts. Your guns are more likely to sound better. GMPs are known for coming out with really good, really high rates of fire. D-Boys, JGs, you plug in your batteries and they could turn into little heaters because they're running so inefficiently. I mean, granted, every brand has their flukes, their problems, but I think there is a high quality AEGs on the market. Crytacs are new. They have MOSFETs. I mean, they're guaranteed to have MOSFETs. They're not this lottery of VFC of like, well, is it a new one, is it not? Crytacs have MOSFETs. They have strong gears. They have very decent gearboxes. Yes, they have problems, quality control issues falling through, but most of the time you're going to pick one up and it's going to shoot really, really well, and it's going to be really consistent. It's going to have a really solid rate of fire. That's not something that you can do with a JG. Pick it up and be like, "Bam, this is awesome gun," or pick it up and be like, "This really isn't all that great."
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how. Something I definitely overlooked is that like the GMP parts, for example, I know the pistons strip a lot on those. Same with VFC, the pistons like to strip in the older generation models, but that's like one of the only common problems. You pick up a JG, for example, it might have a multitude of problems due to poor quality control, poor assembly, or just even when the quality control is good, the gun isn't as well tuned as a GMP or a VFC.
When I think high end, I commonly look to like the car world, like the auto industry. It's like if you were to buy, I don't know, a $20,000 car right now, some Camry or something that was back then where $20,000 would get you a Camry, because I'm not into cars at all, so I don't know a whole lot about them, but it's kind of an analogy I've been thinking in my head when I think of this topic. Like, if you look at a car and you buy it for $20,000, sure, it does all this, and that, and it could have issues down the road, and then you look at a Ferrari that's like, tons and tons of more money, it truly is a higher-end car. But when you look at, taking it in the same perspective of, like, airsoft guns, We'll take a classic Army or a Crytek gun, something that's around $200 and $250, which is, I'd consider the mid-priced AEG. It's got things going for it. It's pretty much guaranteed to be put together well enough to not have many issues out of the box, and it's going to perform pretty well. And then you look at Sistema that starts selling guns for $1,500, sometimes $2,000. They do make improvements, but it still has issues that aren't sorted out because it's just like stupid little issues. And so that's why I don't think Airsoft World truly has a high-end AEG, because when I think high-end, I think something that has literally like almost no flaw for what it is. Because when you get a Systema, you can still have issues with it. I mean, the Celsius guns are really expensive, and they still have like horrible electrical systems. So, and I know that's a poor, comparison to say that it's high-end.
Well, the Celsius is different because they're marketed as a cheaper Systema, so they're a completely different kind of price bracket.
But they're still
like,
really
the
expensive.
Celsius are like the JG or King Arms comparing to like a VFC, as they are comparing to like a Systema, though.
But they're still incredibly expensive, though.
Yeah, that's true. They're still more expensive than the average AEG.
That's why, I think a lot of things need to be changed before we can say we truly have a high-end AEG, because there's so many little spec issues with whether it be externals or internals. So I don't know. I like the Crytek gun. It has a lot of things going for it, but I struggle to call it high-end because it still has stupid nitpicky issues in it. Like, pistons break on those things pretty frequently. The bearings are garbage. Sure, it comes with an awesome MOSFET, which I love. I absolutely hate installing MOSFETs, but it still has issues that shouldn't exist. So that's my kind of issue with it. And it all comes down to the fact of how airsoft as an industry works. Nobody's going to sit around and work on an AEG or make sure the QC on an AEG is absolutely perfect like they would with a Ferrari, because the market doesn't demand it as much. And nobody...
Well, if they did that, we wouldn't have jobs, basically.
Well, kind of, yeah.
we wouldn't have this hobby that we pull in customers for because their JG broke and they have no idea what to do. They just spent their Christmas money on it and they wanted to play airsoft and now it's broken. Well, they come to us to fix it. Well, if there was a true, almost 90% QC pass rate on the Crytek or the new VFCs, for example, and they worked exactly how they were supposed to, and they never broke and they were made properly, people wouldn't need to be going to the techs as often, which doesn't bolster this kind of interest in learning how to tech and learning how to fix your own gun. I know that's what happened to me. Is I saw someone at my field had what at the time I thought was a high rate of fire. It was like, I don't know, 30 BBs a second. This was maybe 4 or 5 years, probably 5 years ago, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, I want that for my gun. And at this time, I had an 8.4 volt nickel metal hydride battery on a stock gun, I hadn't upgraded anything, I didn't know what the world was, and it caused me to just go on YouTube and research. And I think actually, Kory, some of your videos or your posts on Airsoft Mechanic or something was one of the first things that I read. No, it was one of your posts on Airsoft Forum. I completely forget what it was, but I remember seeing your flower icon as the banner at the bottom of the post, and I was and that was just something that stuck with me. And I started to do more research and learn about the hobby and learn about the sport, and that got me involved with Airsoft Society, which is a forum I'm now a moderator on. It got me involved with Airsoft Mechanic, which is a forum. I don't post as often on there, but I read a lot on there. I'm pretty active in what goes on. Basically, I wouldn't be a tech, I wouldn't be in the sport, even just in the hobby as much as I am now, if I didn't buy a shitty gun, basically. If my gun didn't break on me and I wanted to upgrade it and not just repair it. So in that sense, it does kind of bolster the hobby sense of what goes on, I guess.
I think you're looking at two different things as far as, putting yourself out of work or airsoft companies putting you out of work or not. Guns still break.
Yeah.
Even super high quality, they could be the nicest guns on the market, they're still going to break. Stuff is still going to fail. People are still going to get compression jams and are going to strip their pistons out. They're still going to try plugging in 14.8s and the gun's only designed for 7.4s. It's going to happen. And then even beyond that, like what you had, you're going to see people that are like, oh man, that gun shoots 30 rounds a second. It's like, mine only shoots 15. You're going to have people who want to upgrade their gun. They're not going to be happy with their realistic 15 RPS because someone's running around with 30 or 40. You're going to have people that are going to want to shoot harder, shoot further, shoot faster. That their gun, that while it could run forever how it is, isn't good enough. And take TMs, for example. They do run basically forever if you leave them stock. But they don't shoot very fast. They don't shoot... Their FPS is low, the RPS is low, they feel cheap.
They do have that fairy dust in the hop-up, though.
They have fairy dust, yeah.
No lubrication in the hop-up unit, guys.
That kind of goes back to the quality... The
quality
between
control.
What good quality control is versus just making parts strong and hope it all runs well together.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's even...
Parts. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Even if companies do start putting out, I guess y'all's definition of high quality airsoft rifles, ones that are actually tuned properly, that run well, that will work forever, even shooting at 30 rounds a second at 400 FPS out of the box. People are going to want different things. They're going to want to slow it down, speed it up, make it shoot harder, slower.
Yeah, that's also true, is that it's not just fixing the gun, it's upgrading it and changing the performance, which is a whole different kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say, just when you talk about the TM thing, is that because their internal parts aren't even that strong compared to some of the parts you can get for even the cheap guns, like a JG, but they're tuned so well when put together, and the quality control, there's usually not an issue with the gearbox. It's put together the way it's supposed to put together. Like you said, as long as you leave it stock, 99% of the time they won't break. I know one of my friends, Karen Keene, I've known him for a long time through the forum first, and I found him on Facebook recently. You guys probably seen him post all over the place.
Karen,
he had an old TMAK, I think, that he said was going on over 12 years of just use. He never changed the insides of it. It was like the first gun he got. He kept it. He had a big story about a while back restoring it and fixing it because he just had never used it for a while. I think it was like a 12-year-old TMAK, and it still worked when he like tested the stock parts in it. Just goes to show.
All right, so I think we've covered that topic, that question pretty well. We'll have to move on. Kory, do you have a question or something you want to address on the podcast? Oh, getting some. Is everybody still here?
Song stuck in my head, yeah.
I'm still here.
Okay. I heard some massive feedback issue. We'll have to edit this part out, but oh well.
That's alright. You were just asking, the last thing I heard is you said, Kory, do you have a question you want to bring up? And then that's when I noticed the issue, so it shouldn't be that hard to just cut and paste.
Yeah, it won't be that bad. So, go ahead, Kory.
I was going to bring up the same thing that Ryan did about the high quality AEGs. Difference there. That I saw that question pop up on Facebook, and it really intrigued me about thinking about it. One of you guys brought up the difference. Used cars as comparison, and brought up how systems are $2,000 guns that do the same job that a $500 gun or $200 gun will do. And while yes, that to a degree that is true, they aren't designed to perform. They're designed for their shape.
Yeah, that's another
they
thing.
are high quality in the parts that they use, but you don't use a tractor to go down the interstate. You don't use a Formula One race car to get to work back and forth every day.
I would.
Do what?
I would.
I'm not sure that's street legal.
Probably not.
But systems were designed to be realistic, be a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Sorry, be a 1-to-1 replica of a real AR. That's something I didn't realize that was an issue until, I guess, getting more involved with real steel shooting and real steel parts and being like, oh, hey, this does not fit on my airsoft gun, even though it fits on the real gun. That's not a problem you have with a PTW. They aren't marketed to players like us. They're marketed to people who want a gun that's just like their real gun, something that's not bloated, frankly. Airsoft guns, airsoft M4s are fat.
They are.
Compared to what real ARs are. Some people just really don't like it. And for what they are, systems do what they were designed to do. Similar to our discussion about the Pro and Hub Up. They're not perfect, but they do what they're supposed to do. As far as them being a high-end, they're nice, but as far as they use a completely different system from what most AEGs do, but they still shoot the same. I've had this discussion before with other people about how the difference between AEGs. You have your sniper rifles, or just airsoft in general, between a sniper rifle, a Polar Star, an AEG, or just a Springer of some sort. Because they all use the same BB, they all have the same ballistic properties.
Yeah.
You have weight, and that's the only variance, but there's no reason why one gun can't use the same weight that a different gun can. If they're tuned to the best they can, they will perform very similarly. Even PTWs in their stock setups, or excuse me, let me back. PTWs and they're tuned, when they've been tuned expertly and they are flawless in performance, they shoot really, really well. They might not have the range that AEGs have, but I've gone up against this friend that I spoke of earlier that is helping me build my PTW. I've gone up against him many times, and while I'm able to outrange him pretty consistently with my AEGs, his consistency is dead on. As I think I mentioned that some of his guns have less than one FPS variance. It's incredible. Polar Stars have similar performance values where they because they're so consistent, they perform really well. And it makes it difficult to decide what's. I guess when you leave that bracket of AEGs, if you look at airsoft as a whole, what's high quality, what's not. You start to get different definitions. What's good, what's not. Kind of went off on a tangent there.
So, was that your thing you wanted to address as well? Or did you not have something else you wanted to input?
Not really. We covered the high quality bit earlier with Ryan's segment.
Sorry about that.
Nah, that's fine. I guess I covered up about the difference between Systemas and your standard AEGs with your normal TM style AEGs with their huff-up systems and performance values. Of course, you can't get the rate of fires that you can. Here I am with a DSG sitting next to me, a PTW, and it's only doing 31 rounds a second.
That's still pretty fast, though, for a PTW. I normally hear PTWs under 20 RPS,
Slowest DSG I've ever heard of.
I'm not slower, believe it or not. At an M60, I was doing 25 with a. Goodness, was that? I'm sorry. It was.
What were you using?
It was 20-1 with a 32 TPA motor.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I couldn't.
It was as slow as you can get a DSG.
Yeah, I
don't think it gets any slower than 20-1, so I assumed.
I had a spaced with bearings and a faucet washer for AOE correction, M190 DSG that was 18-1, and that thing was super slow. 32 TPA, just 25, 26 RPS maybe, but it sounded amazing because of how smooth it was. Just amazingly responsive and all that stuff.
Spaced M190?
Well, no, I mean with bearings on the piston head. It had bearings on both sides.
The original spacer that Riot marketed, or something equivalent to that with an M190 spring.
No, I can't do that kind of stuff. I'm not Kory.
I have a video of me installing a spaced M210 just to see if I could.
Wait, Jesus Christ. For what setup? Was it a DSG build, or was it a full stroke, you just shot it until something broke, or
no,
you installed it just so you can get the spring in?
I just wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to see if it was possible.
Yeah,
there's no way it would have cycled with an SSG build. I think even a DSG build, I'm not entirely sure there would have been room for the spring to compress. And I think it took me about 13 minutes from start to finish to actually get it installed. And I suspect that 13 minutes of me whittling down was actually the spring slowly collapsing, slowly wearing down to the point that I could actually get it installed. You can actually, through the length of the video, I do have the whole thing videotaped, the spring it's not straight by the time I'm able to get it installed. There are two pretty significant turns in the spring. It was a chore, but I got it.
Now you get to say that. I don't think anyone else can really. Has anyone? I've never heard of someone else doing that.
I've never seen someone with a Riot spring guide spacer. I know Umbrella has used spacers with 210s, but I think the 210s have been cut. I'm not sure they've done it with a full length 210.
Yeah.
And a full length spacer.
Riot, yeah, because those are long spacers. That's not just 2 or 3 of those washers you can buy and put on your spring guide.
Right, they're good, inch long, maybe a little longer.
All right, so before we close out, I want to talk about one little thing for me real quick. A lot of people ask me, well, not a lot, I've gotten a couple questions where people ask me, how's the SHS DSG? And I have one right here. So I want to talk about it.
Heathen.
So shut up. It's not mine. It is a customer's SHS DSG.
Yeah, that's what they all say.
So yeah,
Nice. Someone's paying me to do this.
when I first got it, like it was in the gearbox shell, and the guy had just like been like, okay, I threw everything in and I couldn't get it to work, so here you go, have fun. I was like, yay! So I got it and I'm checking it out right now. But I'm gonna try to make a YouTube video on it later, but that's never guaranteed. YouTube stuff's never guaranteed for me. But the SHS DSG, it's pretty nice. I know that's like heresy to say, but it's pretty nice.
It's heresy to say.
Yeah, I know. But the like SHS sectors themselves have never really had issues inherently. They've always been like QC issues. They've never been like actual construction issues. So occasionally you'll get a SHS sector that has like the lower and the upper split, and that's because they didn't press it correctly. So that's an issue with QC, not necessarily construction. This one is it has good QC, so it's not like split or it's not crap, so it's fine. It's hard to really say that this DSG is bad simply because it's SHS, because it's pretty tough looking. I really want to test this because I've ran my single DSG gear that I have on an M190 and M170. I've gone anywhere from 60 RPS to 25 RPS. I've done everything with it. I really, really want to test this thing just to see what its limits are, and I honestly don't think I'll find them because it's not something that's really hard to mess up on unless you use horrible material or you have horrible QC. So, like Modify, for example, they have horrible material with their DSG, and it wouldn't really stand up well anything past an M150 at 40 RPS. That's basically its threshold. So that makes it bad because it has a limit there, and that that limit is something that most DSG builds surpass. So that's the problem with that. This SHS DSG, I'm pretty sure it can easily last higher than the modified DSG, just simply because of how well other SHS sectors have performed. I'm running SHS helical gears in my Barrett right now, pulling an M170 spring full stroke, and I fired it full auto, and it runs fine. But granted, helical gears are different than standard gears. But still, the SHS gear set, if you get one that doesn't have QC issues, they're pretty solid. And so this one, I think it'll be just not just as solid as the SiegeTech DSG, but solid enough for our airsoft usage. It's kind of like that gearbox thing where, are you really going to need one to really push it past its limits? Are you going to use that in airsoft kind of argument? So that's kind of the argument there.
Yeah, I have no personal experience at all with the Modify or the SHS DSG, so I guess I can't really comment on the strength compared to the Riots, but I have used Riot Gen 1 and Gen 2 GSGs, and I've used Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 gears in general from him. The only issues I've ever had with them breaking were I had two 10-to-1 bevels where they contact the pinion. I've had them break. However, that is because I also had a Riot pinion gear on a 32 and 22 TPA motor with the two setups. And they both had Riot pinion gears contacting the Riot bevels. And my grip was holding the motor at an angle that I didn't realize right away. So because of that, you had two of the SiegeTech gears grinding against one another. One of them had to break, and it just happened to be the one receiving force, not applying force. But other than those two issues, which are completely my own fault, I didn't realize the grip was off angle until I broke two SiegeTech gears, and I was like, this isn't right. Ever since I corrected that, I never had an issue with them at all. I can't comment on the SHS Modify. However, I do know, just from doing research and talking to others, the Modifies were just inherently weaker. And I think originally the Tappet cams too, they shredded the Tappet plate fins or something like that. They just had a bunch of weird issues with them. SHS's, I'll take Ryan's word for it. If they look promising, they're half the price of Riots. I'm just so familiar with Riots. I'm so confident in them. I doubt I'll ever buy an SHS DSG unless it's literally just to test it and see if I can break it, to then report back and tell whether it's worth it or not, or how strong it is.
I know I've seen lots of posts on AirsoftTech and Q&A show up about the SHS DSG, and there have been a couple M170 builds on them, and no one's reported that they've failed. So I don't have any personal experience with them either, but the general consensus appears to be that they're decent guns. They're decent gears. They look good. They look like SHS's Gen 4 sectors. They look solid. I agree with Ryan that it's hard to screw it up unless you have just a really poor design or use really poor material. SHS's material is strong, and the design they're using is a decent copy of the Gen 1 DSGs from Siege Tech. So they know it's a good design. I think it's very similar to how Ryan suggested about the difference between getting an RA shell or a GMP shell. It's like, are you really going to be pushed out there this hard to need a Riot DSG? And at this point, are you? If you're pushing that hard, you're going to want a full gear set. My first DSG, I broke it. I hit premature engagement. It was paired with SHS 18-1s. The spur stripped, and it knocked a tooth off of the bottom part of the DSG.
Ouch.
Yeah, I got it repaired. It was still a new DSG, replaced. Siege Tech has an awesome warranty that you're not going to get with SHS, but you have the difference of a $20 gear versus a $60 gear.
Yeah, that's something else I guess I can point out, is that I didn't break my DSG, I broke my bevel gear, but even that, Riot replaced my bevel gear completely for free, no questions asked when I broke it the first time. When I broke the replacement, he charged me, but he only charged me half of what the individual gear cost. So I got one free replacement, and I bought another one for $15. So that's definitely worth it, in my opinion, to have a gear that now I know is installed correctly, will not break again. And even though it was my own personal error both times that broke the gear, I still got not just one but two replacements. The first one free, second one half off. Like, that's just not going to come with a company like SHS, especially with the ACM lottery, where sometimes they just do break.
Right. So that's one thing to take into consideration. The different people that back it up. Like, one's backed up by some guy who's on forums who you can message or email, and he'll actually talk to you. Him himself will talk to you. And then if you try to talk to SHS like that, they'll probably ignore your email because you're insignificant to them, and they're in China, so that's kind of their thing. But I believe this pretty much wraps us up. That's our whole outline. We got everything done. We talked about our recent builds, product review, short debate/discussion, and we even got to Q&A. Hey, and we're under 2 hours. Go figure.
Under 2 hours, yeah. We finished our outline like Ryan said. We went over everything we planned to talk about.
And we did it all under 2 hours.
It's a big goal for us.
Does it normally go over 2 hours?
No.
No, we joked. So the very first podcast we did, we set a 45-minute goal. I think we ended up doing a total of an hour and a half. We doubled the time. And then since then, we've tried to bring it down to 45 minutes, completely unsuccessfully every single time we go way over. And even harder when we have a third person on, it just naturally takes even longer than it would have because there's more talking, more opinions. So I think, right, we were just joking, we were saying finally, officially throw away the 45-minute goal because it's not going to happen. We talk too much.
Oh well, that's the nature of techs and three of us, so... Alright, but that'll have to do it for this episode of the TheAirsoftTech podcast. This is episode 8. We have Kory Escue as a special guest, so would you like to say anything before we end this, Kory?
Thanks for letting me on with you guys. Been a pleasure talking with you. I've enjoyed the last hour and a half or so. I don't have anything else to add.
Any plugs, any Facebook pages the listeners should like?
Yeah, I guess there's a Airsoft Teching Q&A on Facebook. Probably the largest collection of techs that I'm aware of. It's decently administrated by two of us. It's got a pretty strong admin staff. Better than asking questions on classifieds or other groups.
I'm not cool enough to help out with the Facebook group yet.
That's okay. You'll get there. Forums are still important.
Some of us have to take on the responsibility.
Any other Facebook pages, Kory, like the ones that I just recently liked?
Yes, I do have my own field, my own page. I do have a website, Escue Airsoft. I run a field down here in South Carolina. We have a store. It's not online. You guys have to suck it up and walk in to buy anything from us.
That's a far walk, Kory. Your love's not worth that.
My website is Escue Airsoft. That's just SQAirsoft.com.
We'll provide links below.
I do try to keep it up with... go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt. I was just going to say we'll provide links below.
Okay. Well, we'll provide links below. I do try to keep the website up to date with... I have a tech topic or a tech section on there. I have several guides that I've written throughout the years. Some new ones. I'm working on a new player section. If you're looking how to, clean your guns, just general basic maintenance for your airsoft guns of different kinds and types. Trying to cater towards the newer players, people who are just entering into the sport. Of course, running a field, I'm starting to see lots and lots more of those as we get more and more popular. So it's always helpful to have a place that I can point them to that I know is good quality. I don't have to tell them to go search the internet for a guide that may or may not be anything it's worth. So that's always that's fun and exciting, seeing new players get in and trying to help them out as much as possible.
Mm-hmm, certainly. All right.
On the right path.
Yeah. Not send them out to...
teach them early.
Older guides that have poor information or poor advice.
AST Kilo 23.
We made that joke in a previous podcast. We talked about the shimming, right? How you were like shameless self-plug and you comment on your own shimming method. And then we made the joke about how stuff gets outdated and you chime in and you're like, AST Kilo 23 shimming guides.
Yeah.
A local player, another tech. He's an old tech. I guess I'd call him an old generation tech. He doesn't keep up with the modern stuff, but he still does everything with spur method shimming. And a couple years ago, he did a video about shimming to the spur method. And if you Google shimming a gearbox, his video shows up now. I was really impressed that it got as much momentum as it did, being half an hour video about shimming a gearbox, twice as long as the other two, and I think AST's is up there as well. His is 7 minutes. It's interesting seeing the difference there. Not saying that it works for him most of the time. He does a good job tuning his guns, but I do agree. It's like there are better methods that cut out guessing, second guessing. He has his reasons. He's not a bad tech because he does it that way.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing that, like, whenever I hear somebody use the spur method, I immediately cringe. Like, the inside of me cringes, but at the same time, I remind myself that just because you use the spur gear method doesn't mean that your shimming itself is going to be bad. It just means that you've put a lot more time into it that could have been wasted, and because it's like almost the spur method itself is a guessing game, kind of. So it's not really like a finite, like a perfect method, I guess you could say, but it works for some people. So
think of it this way: DSG builds, right, gears are older than the spur method. Spur method is rather new to airsoft. It hasn't been along for that long. Pinion bevel method is a lot newer to airsoft.
I'm pretty sure spur method was around before.
Excuse me.
Right.
It's not like gears just strip themselves every other game because people are using the spur method. It still works.
Yeah.
It's just not as efficient as the bevel pinion. You can still have a very well-performing gun and shim it the spur method than you can the bevel and pinion.
Right, exactly.
It just might not sound as good, or it might not get as much efficiency out of the actual contact between the pinion and bevel. Or
it might take you an hour to do it instead of half an hour or something like that, trying to get that just right.
All right, well, that brings us to the official end of this podcast. We're at an hour.
The third ending of the podcast.
We're at an hour, 40 minutes, and 21, 22, 23 seconds. So we'll have to end it here. But we'd like to thank
talking your ears off.
Yeah, we do it every week. It doesn't matter.
Oh, it's terrible.
Well, I want to go to bed. Let's stop talking.
All right. Well.
Tired.
Thanks, Kory, for being on here with us. We enjoyed it. We always enjoy having guests, especially guests that have much more knowledge than we do.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, we will see you guys later.